Admiral Sam Locklear, Commander, U.S. Pacific Command.
Well, Barry, as always in our lives together, you leave me speechless on a number of occasions, so I'm not sure I can live up to that great introduction, but thank you, and thank you for your years of service. And a special thanks today to the Asia Society for this opportunity to speak to this really distinguished group. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and it's an honor for me to have a few minutes just to share my thoughts and then hopefully get some questions from you about what the future of the Asia Pacific looks like, at least from the perspective of a PACOM. Now, I've been the Pacific Commander for about 9 months now. And during that time, I've grown in my appreciation of the diverse complexity of this Asia Pacific. In fact, if you notice, I'm not referring to the Asia Pacific as a region, because in many ways this tends to really oversimplify and underrepresent not only the size, but the complexity and the diversity of the opportunities, as well as the significant challenges that we face today and will ultimately continue to face in the Asia Pacific. The Asia Pacific has been described by some as stretching from Hollywood to Bollywood. And that's really the area of my focus, is from the coast of California to India. It encompasses over half the Earth's surface and is well more than half its population. The Pacific Ocean, most of the people don't know, is the largest feature on the planet. We have a tendency to look at Mercator projections. You know what that means, of flat maps? And it really underrepresents the complexity and the size of the world that we live on. It has, if you took all the land masses in the world, from Antarctica to every island to every continent, you could put all of them in the Pacific Ocean, and you would still have room for another African continent, America, United States, Canada, and Mexico. So that gives you some idea of the size of it. In fact, when you take a ship from San Diego to Hawaii, which most people think is not that far, you've basically traversed the same distance you would going from Norfolk to the United Kingdom, to London. It's an incredibly culturally, socially, economically, and geopolitically diverse region. The many nations who associate themselves there include the world's largest economies, and that doesn't appear to be going to change anytime soon. 7 of the 10 smallest economies. The most populated nations in the world's largest democracy, the largest Muslim majority nation, and the smallest republic in the world as well. Asia is the engine that drives the global economy. Last year alone, there was over $8 trillion of two-way trade. 9 of the world's 10 largest ports are here, 9 of the 10 in the world. The sea lanes here are the busiest in the world, through which pass over 50% of all the world container cargo every minute, and over 70% of all the energy that flows in the world flows in this area. By any meaningful measure, the Asia Pacific is the most militarized area in the world as well. 7 of the world's 10 largest standing armies are in the Asia Pacific. The world's largest and most sophisticated navies are in the Asia Pacific. And 5 of the world's declared nuclear nations are in the Asia Pacific. All of these aspects, when you take them together, result in, I think, a unique strategic complexity. And of course, this complexity is magnified by a wide, diverse group of challenges that at any point in time can, if allowed to, stress the security environment. A few examples. Climate change, where increasingly severe weather patterns and rising sea levels will threaten our peoples and even threaten the loss of entire nations. And of course, the inevitable earthquakes and tsunamis will continue to challenge all of us in a very unpredictable way as our planet ages. Today, we're dealing with our friends and partners and allies in the Philippines as they deal with a tragic storm that has struck there. It was 26 whiskey is what is called by the people who measure storms in the Western Pacific. The average number of storms each year is about 16. We're on number 26. I don't know what that means for the future, but I know what it means now. Transnational, non-state threats including pandemics, pirates, terrorism, criminal organizations, all these will continue to challenge us. No matter how hard we work at it, they will still be there. As will drugs and human trafficking, and of course, the continued proliferation of weapons of mass destruction will challenge us. Historic and emerging border and territorial disputes will no doubt continue. Access and freedom of action in the shared domains of sea, space, cyberspace will be increasingly challenged. Competition for water, food, and energy will grow. Instability on the Korean Peninsula will persist. We're dealing with that today. And the progressive nuclearization, along with the advanced missile technology of the North Korean regime, will threaten the regional and global security environment now and potentially into the future. And of course, how the rise of China and India as a global economic powers and military powers emerge, and how they integrate into an established, generally peaceful and stable security environment, which I would note in modern times has been underpinned by a U.S. military presence, this will be key. And adding to the picture a recognition that no single governance mechanism exists in the Asia-Pacific to manage our relationships and, when needed, to provide a framework for conflict resolution. There is no Pacific NATO. Will there be someday? I don't know. I'm not clairvoyant. But what exists, we have to be realistic about what exists. And instead, what I see is a patchwork quilt of interwoven security relationships. Now, for those of you who don't know what a patchwork quilt is, you're probably not from the deep South like I am, but I actually grew up sleeping under a patchwork quilt. It's basically different pieces of cloth of varying size, varying color, and varying texture that are roughly stitched together in a somewhat disorganized but effective form that actually works as a blanket or a quilt. So if you think about it, our patchwork quilt relationships in the Asia-Pacific have been shaped by history, by shared interest, and increasingly driven by our economic interconnectedness. They range from historic bilateral alliances to mature and emerging multilateral forums that focus on converging interests and security concerns, with those same relationships often struggling to be effective when member states' interests diverge. And as nations become more internally secure, which they are, we're seeing that across Asia-Pacific, they will inevitably start to shift military resources from internal to external security matters as they seek to preserve their own access to the global domains. Consequently, this patchwork quilt is underpinned by a shifting tide of military resources as prospering nations, by necessity, spend more on military hardware while others downsize. So for me, there are really two serious questions that I have to contemplate as a PACOM commander. First, in this extremely diverse and complex environment that must rely on a patchwork quilt of security relationships to ensure relative peace, can we together create an Asia-Pacific security environment that is resilient enough to withstand the shocks and the aftershocks of potentially destabilizing events that are inevitable in this complex environment, all the while maintaining relative peace and stability? And the second, what is the nature of the United States' enduring role in this patchwork quilt? So as to the first question, I'll admit up front, I don't know the answer. I don't know if we can be successful. But what I do know is that my children and my grandchildren are counting on us to try to be successful. As for the second question, let me comment briefly on how I see the U.S. role, specifically the U.S. military role in the Asia-Pacific as we go forward. As I assumed command of PACOM, I was fortunate to receive clear and concise guidance from President Obama, providing the strategic underpinning and the priorities of how, after a decade of war in the Middle East, we will, and the words are by necessity, rebalance to the Asia-Pacific. The rebalance draws on the strengths of the entire U.S. government, including policy, diplomacy, trade, and of course, where I am most focused, security. A rebalance that must be resourced by a U.S. military that will transform to be more agile, more efficient, more technologically advanced, more lethal, and ultimately a military better suited to the task of securing U.S. interests around the globe. There's been significant speculation and skepticism about the U.S. rebalance. For instance, is it achievable? Can we sustain it? And some questions if it's merely a containment strategy in disguise. It's not. The rebalance is based on a strategy of collaboration and not containment, and focuses on three major elements. First, strengthening relationships, both with allies, historic partners, and emerging partners. Adjusting our military posture and presence where necessary, and employing new concepts and capabilities and capacities to ensure we continue to effectively, efficiently contribute to the security environment and protect U.S. national interests. The cornerstone of our rebalance effort will be to modernize and strengthen our 5 Pacific Treaty Alliances, and that work has begun in earnest. Now, some have opined that these alliances are relics of post-World War II Cold War security structures, and that they are ill-suited for the challenges of tomorrow's security environment. From where I sit, this is not correct. I can tell you that these alliances bring with them years of mutual trust, understanding, respect, considerable interoperability and information sharing, and a common view of the regional security landscapes and challenges. And one thing that's often missed is that they provide a good base from which multilateral relationships can grow, all of which will continue to underpin U.S. security objectives in the Indo-Pacific, Asia-Pacific for decades to come. But it's also important that we continue to develop and expand bilateral partnerships beyond our treaty allies with those nations of whom we have shared security interests. In October, I made my first trip to India, where I witnessed firsthand the invaluable perspective of the world's largest democracy and one of the world's most rapidly growing economies. Our two nations share and embrace the same values, a love of freedom and entrepreneurial spirit that fuels the potential of the global economy. Going forward, PACOM, as I've been directed, will increase the efforts to mature our strategic partnership and expand engagement with India, as well as support her leadership role in the Indian Ocean and South Asia. And while modernizing and strengthening our bilateral relationships, we'll also strengthen our commitment to multilateral forums such as ASEAN and the East Asian Summit. In fact, you probably noted President Obama, right after the election, attended the East Asia Summit in Cambodia, along with visits to Thailand and then Burma. And in the coming weeks, I will visit Indonesia, who will host APEC in 2013. And recently, I joined the Indonesians at Kokoda Trilogy Summit in Australia. I'll travel to Brunei very soon, who will become the new chair of the ASEAN at the beginning of next year. So there really can be no mistake from where I sit that the United States is committed to the Asia-Pacific. We'll also continue to pursue a lasting, meaningful mill-to-mill relationship with China. I get asked about this a lot, and I'm sure you'll want to talk about that. So, since I took command, I've traveled to China twice. Once for a strategic economic dialogue with Secretary Clinton, and once for my own mill-to-mill engagement, which was the first time a PACOM commander had done that in a number of years. And I have hosted reciprocal visits at my headquarters in Hawaii. In fact, I have a delegation from the PLA Navy that's in my headquarters yesterday, as late as yesterday, discussing our mill-to-mill opportunities. Our two countries have a strong stake in regional peace and stability and an interest in building a cooperative bilateral relationship. We're hoping to look past our differences and to focus our relationship on our converging interests, such as counter-piracy, counter-terrorism, protecting sea lines of communication, and humanitarian assistance and disaster response, and these are just to name a few. We'll continue to pursue mill-to-mill relationship that is healthy, stable, resilient, enduring, and look for opportunities to increase our cooperation and encourage mutual understanding and trust, while at the same time avoiding and managing miscalculation. Today, there's over 350,000 U.S. military personnel serving in the Asia-Pacific. With them, about 70,000 family members, all of whom continue to demonstrate our U.S. commitment to our allies and partners. Our persistent forward presence made up of our people and the equipment that they bring enables our forces to work daily, side by side, with our partners to quickly respond to current and future challenges. Now, based on the vast geography, the common needs, and the challenges as we go forward, I believe this presence remains a necessity. Now, as part of the rebalance with the support of our allies and partners, we are working towards a force posture that is geographically distributed so that our forces remain relevantly deployed in the 21st century. It's a force that must be operationally resilient in order to be ready to respond in crisis or to aid those affected by humanitarian or natural disasters. And the force must also be politically sustainable. Keys to the success will be innovative access agreements, increased exercises, rotational presence, and efficient force posture initiatives that maximize every dollar that we have to spend. For instance, I'm also looking internal to my own staff to ensure that my headquarters is properly aligned for the future, to allow it to manage the day-to-day operations throughout the PACOM area of responsibility, but also to be able to quickly transform to any focal point during an exercise or contingency. We'll also be placing our most capable forces forward in the Asia Pacific to ensure we successfully operate with our allies and our partners across a wide range of operations as we collectively work for peace and stability. At the top of the list, our most advanced ships and submarines, fifth-generation aircraft, including Joint Strike Fighters and our P-8 maritime patrol aircraft, the very best air and missile defense technologies that we can produce, our most proficient ISR assets, an adaptable and responsive joint coalition command and control architecture, and of course, the most highly trained soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines in the world. Now, in the coming weeks and months as PACOM, I will continue to execute the rebalance. I will highlight developing initiatives involving innovative concepts and capabilities and note to our leadership where I need more capacity. These efforts are not necessarily led by the military. Oftentimes I'm not the supported commander, I'm the supporting commander of other agencies, of other parts of our government. But all of this will require continue to partner with our allies and our friends, as well as other agencies across our government. And they're all going to be focused on contributing to a more resilient and prosperous Asia Pacific as we go forward. So to conclude, let me once again admit that I didn't answer the first question I put before you today, whether or not this patchwork quilt that is the Asia Pacific security environment can keep the peace so that our children or our grandchildren can benefit from our having gotten it right. What I can confidently say, however, is that on the second question concerning U.S.'s enduring role, that will always be informed by the imperative that we cannot fail to maintain peace and stability in the Asia Pacific. Through the tumultuous years of the last century, America's military served as the single most stabilizing factor in the Asia Pacific security environment, and I believe this will continue. America is a Pacific power, and PACOM looks forward to the hard work ahead to allow us to do our part to keep a dynamic Asia Pacific hopeful, peaceful, secure for decades to come. So I appreciate the opportunity to give you these remarks, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.